This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, May 4th, 2023. And my guest is Hasib Awan of Ifani. Hi, Hasib. How are you?
Hey, hi, Miriam. How are you?
Great. So your company, Ifani, specializes in SIM swapping protection. And so I thought, hey, a lot of people are running into problems these days with identity theft and security related to how easy it is for SIM swapping scams to happen. So I was wondering, let's talk about that. What can you tell us about SIM swapping? Educate us about that, the problem. I mean, I think my audience is pretty tech savvy. They probably know a little bit about it. But tell us about it and tell us about, what people could do to prevent it, even without changing carriers. And then what you bring to the table with Ifani as well.
Sure, happy to. So SIM swap, as you talked about identity. The biggest part of your identity nowadays is telephone number. We are all aware that how social security number can destroy your life if someone hacker gets hacked of it. They can create an account. But we never think about our telephone number as our identity. If you give me a telephone number, through telephone number, I can get more information about you than your social security number. So it's like kind of an identifier for everyone. What hackers are doing is they're exploiting this hole to get into people's accounts. Now, because the carriers are always advertising, we will give you cheaper lines, we'll give you free months, they are just looking for more customers. And that's perfectly right. The only challenge is they compromise on cell phone security and other things that need to be done because they're always about efficiency and faster. We are a cybersecurity company which was formed to protect people who are more vulnerable, a protection that ordinary carrier doesn't happen. So what is a SIM swap? Pretty simple. People get into cell phone, into your carrier account, transfer the number to them, and then use it to get into other people's accounts.
Right. And so there's a few things here I want to add, right? Like the first thing is they use social engineering for that. They call your carrier, they come and make up some kind of, sad story to get access to your account, because this is a classic thing. The carriers don't really have processes in place, or they're starting to, but it's not really very solid. So that's one way they get your phone number, get into your account through a rep and get the SIM swapped. And then once the SIM is swapped, I think the thing you're kind of not telling here is most people, the big majority of people, use two-factor authentication with an SMS, right? So once the hacker has your phone number and on a different SIM, like your phone has a SIM in it that no longer has service because they took over your SIM card on another phone, they now get your text messages. So if they now have a database of logins, of passwords, they can go through that database and try to brute force into your bank account or whatever. And then they get a text, right, to confirm that's who it is. And so that text has that code. And then they can get into your bank account. And they can do this for almost everything because a lot of people just use text messaging for 2FA. Now, obviously, the first thing you want to do is probably use an authentication app or an authentication key, right? Like a hardware key to prevent this in the first place. But there's still always a way, as a backup to get in through text-based 2FA. And so, basically, if you lose your phone number, if you lose your SIM, if you lose access to your text messages, as you said, it's almost worse than social security number, right? You have so much more access. Is that basically what you're saying?
Absolutely, because it has gone beyond. Like I had heard stories recently where people actually went to everyone's mailboxes, stole their credit card, and then SIM swapped their numbers and got into their bank account and stole everything. Because now they have their physical card, and now they have telephone number. Through that, they got into email account, and boom, they have everything.
Right. Joanna Stern actually wrote about that recently on the Wall Street Journal. I think that this is a big risk for a lot of people. Obviously, you can take some steps to prevent that. Like one of the ways to do that is not use your main phone number as your 2FA number, right? So you can have two separate accounts, two separate SIMs. And that way it's a little harder because all the stuff on record, your phone number for your bank to call you or whatever, is not the same as the number you use for 2FA. Also using authenticator apps, right? what other steps can they take, the audience, short of course, doing what you specialize in, which is going to a secure carrier like Efani?
Yes, obviously, first of all, we can't serve everyone. We cater to a very small group of people. So, absolutely, 99.9999% people are vulnerable. So, what do they do? You mentioned using a two-factor authentication app like Authy, Microsoft Authenticator, Google Authenticator. There are a lot of apps that you can download for free and do it for free. That's number one. You have to do it. Number two thing is you again mentioned to have a secondary number if they want to, just for 2FA. But the challenge with having a telephone number is because people are generally forget what they like. If you ask them to do too many things, they get confused. But that's the second best to not
Right.
having it. Having a second number like a VoIP number, but a lot of companies do not accept a VoIP number. So just having a second SIM card that no one
you
knows.
can't do VoIP for a lot of 2FA.
That's correct. That's what I'm saying. It's a limitation. So just have a number that no one have access to, and don't have a family account. I know it looks pretty stupid, but family accounts are the most vulnerable accounts.
So yeah, I think that, one solution here obviously is our sponsor today, Mint Mobile, right? If you want to get a SIM from a prepaid carrier that's very affordable, you can get an account for as little as $15 a month. So there you go. That's a solution. You get security by obfuscation, security by the fact that you have a second SIM. But you're also offering a solution that I think is really interesting. Basically, you're a virtual network operator, right, Efani, and you're offering the same kind of perks you see from the big three, like 5G, international roaming, unlimited data, hotspot, all the features you'd expect today from a modern postpaid line. And you're offering that with a very, very strong, SIM swapping protection security stack. Not only hardware and software security stack, but also you vet the people who work for your company, and you're doing things like, guarantees, like you basically have like a insurance on the account, etc. So that's one way. That's kind of like the hardcore way to go, right?
Absolutely. Again, we serve a very small market. It's like a very niche market that we serve only who are super at risk or they want to beef up. But for majority of the carriers, people, they don't have an option. They just want to go with the cheapest service that they can get. So use the service that you want and have a second number, as you mentioned. So this is perfectly. And also having a password manager also helps. And one thing people should do is they should go into their accounts and delete their telephone number from account if it allows them to. And for bank accounts, they also have something called putting a limit where you can say that no one can withdraw more than $100,000 or $10,000, depending on personal bank accounts, that you never allow a transfer over $1,000. And that is a very good way to save against your money too. Or put a limit on credit cards and having multiple credit cards, like something like that. Or having a notification on email that if someone spent $1 or any amount on your credit card, you get a notification. So you can catch it much faster.
Right. So yeah, there's a number of things you can do, folks, with the existing technology that you use every day. So as Hasib just mentioned, you can, your bank has some options to secure your account. My bank lets me do 2FA without text messaging. So it lets me use an authenticator app. Also lets me validate my logins on a computer with my app on the phone. And remember, that is not text message based, that is data based. So as long as I have Wi-Fi connectivity, I can still log into my bank account if I still have my physical phone in person with the app installed and logged in. Not logged in because I use, obviously, most of the banking app lets you do biometric, right? So these are some of the things you can do. The other thing you can do, as I mentioned, is have a separate SIM card for all your 2FA stuff. And our sponsor can help you with that. And then, of course, you can also use a two-factor app and password manager. Now, the password manager is a, very good idea. But as you saw, this is not bulletproof, right? Recently, one of the password manager, was it LastPass, I think?
LastPass,
got hacked, right?
Yeah.
So, so that is obviously a challenge. But look, the reality is it's still better than you having a list of passwords somewhere or using the same passwords everywhere, etc. So what else do you think, other than kind of like using the existing tools they have? So what else do you think people should be doing? Should they go as far as subscribing to some sort of identity protection? Do you think that helps? Or do you think that's really just a Band-Aid over the problem?
It frankly all depend on personal security and everything. Like I'll give you an example with Ifani. Our plan is $100, right? So $100 per month. If some people who are paying $25, it's not affordable for them. They can't do it. So similar for identity theft protection. Again, depends on someone because they start from like $5 go to $25 per month. So it ultimately depends on how much you want to spend on your security. The challenge is that a lot of people are just looking for the cheapest service, and it's like a car insurance. In California, a lot of people don't even have car insurance. People don't buy house insurance. In the end, some people get lucky, but some people's lives get destroyed. My personal mantra, my personal thing is that I mitigate my downside. Anything I do in my life, I see what's the downside and try to proceed. Like with insurance, I'll get the most insurance policy. So people should give a shot at, call their current carrier. It will not work, but still you have done some work, and tell them that do not port option or something. Again, it's very easy to bypass, but that's one protection. Remove your telephone number from as many places as possible.
Yeah, there are some options available from carriers today.
Yeah, it's very simple to bypass.
Yeah, no, it's not perfect. But if you don't already have that turned on, go into your account right now and at least turn on these features. They exist and they are giving you a very small layer of protection, right?
Yeah, 100%. Something's better than nothing, you know? So if you say, hey, I cannot afford it and I have to be stuck tipped, so that's the easiest way for you to do it. And get off family plan. Get a cell phone plan that's only for you and just dedicated to you for your security and everything. Because losing everything in your bank account is not fun at all. And then password managers and app and authenticators for sure. And use a hardware key. Hardware key like $35.
Yeah, and when you get the opportunity to change any kind of login to 2FA, two-factor authentication, that doesn't use SMS, do that. Like, it doesn't matter what it uses, but don't use SMS. Like, you're better off, using an app or through the bank's own app or through another means, sometimes even email. You can set up a custom email account that's just that you never store the password anywhere, that you memorize that password, that is super secure, uses the 2FA app to get in, and that's maybe where some of your 2FA stuff comes in, and nobody has to know about that email address. I mean, this is not perfect, but you have a whole bunch of options. So Hasib, any other things that the audience should know about SIM swapping and generally security related to their SIM card, their phone number, their carrier?
Yeah, I think the challenge with the cybersecurity in general is that people don't realize that it's an actual threat. And even before I became a victim, I thought it will never be me, it will be someone else, right? It's like, unfortunately, some accident happened. I say, oh, it can never happen to me. Cybersecurity is real. It's happening in multiple shape and forms. And we use our cell phone like most of the time in our life. Like, I'm on for maybe like 5 or 6 hours, 7, 8 hours per day. And if I can secure one thing, that's my cell phone. So you can search for like how to secure my iPhone, how to secure my Android, and do everything. Literally will take like 5, 10, 20 minutes, but will save you a fortune. And please do that. That will not even cost you extra money.
Yeah. And then, the other option, if you want, in my opinion, get a second SIM with a prepaid carrier, something really cheap, that's basic. So you can get your 2FA if you absolutely must get 2FA on text messages. And then, if you want to escalate to the luxury solution, talk to Hasib at Ifani and get yourself, a solid virtual network data plan that is secure. Well, folks, we're going to continue now with the rest of the show. Hasib, thank you so much for chiming in, letting us know, educating us and my audience about some of these security challenges with your SIM, with your phone number, with your eSIM, with your phone. I think it was very helpful. I appreciate your help.
Thank you, Miriam.
And now that we know everything about SIM swapping, folks, I'm here with Dean Daly of Mobile Syrup. Hi, Dean. How are you?
Hi, Miriam. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. This is exciting.
Absolutely. I'm super happy that we connected a little more in Chicago for Moto last week. And in fact, this is basically what the week has been all about, is Moto. Surprisingly, there hasn't been that much more news. There's lots of rumors and leaks, and we're going to touch on some of that. But what's your take? You were in Chicago with me. Does it feel like Moto's got its mojo back? Because it certainly does to me.
Yeah, I was actually surprised and excited to see their new products and to actually touch them and get a hold of them. they're looking really good right now, especially for us Canadians, and I guess even the North American market, where there's not a lot of different variant phones anymore, and Moto is a good option now.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I split my time between Canada and the US, and so obviously I pay attention to what's happening for the Canadian market, even though I'm a US based journalist. And I'm glad to see that most of the phones are also going to make it to Canada, right? So they launched 3 phones this week: the Moto Edge
Yes.
Plus 2023, which I think we're going to spend a lot of time on because I'm super excited about that one. I'm sure you too. And then
Yes.
we have the Moto G 5G and the Moto Stylus, which we're not getting in Canada, but
No, we're not.
it's coming to the US. Look, I'm not going to spend any time on those two. I'll put links in the show notes about, information onto, people have gathered all the specs and the pricing and stuff. I've never been a huge fan of the Moto Gs, not because they're bad phones, but for me, like lack of NFC, which is ongoing, it's just a real
Crazy.
I I
Absolutely
don't
crazy.
yeah, I don't know how they can justify it, honestly. And then the other thing is, like they're priced competitively for the US, I guess, or for Canada, maybe. And they're, available through carriers. Those are bonuses, I suppose. But when you see what you can get from the Chinese market, if you go on Amazon, at least Amazon US, and you look at what you can order from Poco or Realme or Redmi, it's just no point. Like I'd rather buy a phone like that, not really get too many software updates, get NFC and use it for 2 years for the same price, get much better bang for my buck. That's just me, and I think my audience is pretty tech savvy. They'd feel the same.
And you wouldn't even need you wouldn't need to go to the Chinese market either. I mean, Samsung has so many
Oh
budget
yeah,
to
the A
mid range
series, yeah.
phones as well, the A series as well. So there are a lot of options in that category that I wouldn't really concern myself with the Moto G. When I did a hands on of the Edge Plus, all I did was state there's also a Moto G 5G, because there's no point. I don't really think people are. I think there are some people who buy them, but I don't think that's where people are not excited about that. People are not looking forward to that.
I agree with you, and I will link to your hands-on. Also, if you go to Hot Hardware, folks, I do a lot of their reviews. I actually provided the pictures for the article that Ryan wrote there. I just didn't have time to write it up, so I delegated.
Yeah, I saw your pictures, and I'm like, man, we were in the same studio, like the same spot, like the same area to do these photos, and your photos turned out really good. I wish that mine did as well, but yeah, yours were great.
Well, thanks so much. I'm pride myself in being a relatively decent product photographer. I did take that picture of you though, right? Is that the one you put on your story?
Yes, I did. I wanted to like I'm going to do an actual post of this is specifically the Moto Edge and talk about it. I'm going to make sure I camera credit you as well because that
Oh,
is a
you don't
great
have to.
shot.
You don't have to put my name down. I just thought it was fun that you used my photo that I took of you. Um, but look, the reality is that Edge has gotten me excited because here's the thing. For years, we've seen the rest of the world, Europe in particular, and Asia, get all these really nice high-end Moto phones that make no compromises. Now, of course, it's hard for us to gauge because pricing varies from country to country, from region to region. But the reality is we've been getting the short end of the stick in North America, right? Like we've been getting these
100%.
like watered down edge phones that are called edge. Those some of them didn't even have an curved edge screen. Not that I like the curved edge screens myself, but in general I prefer flat screens. But if you're gonna call a phone edge, you know,
It has to have a screen. It has to have that curved screen for sure.
or it has to be bleeding edge.
Hmm.
I don't know. So what's your take on this phone? Like, I mean, I think it's nailing it.
So I 100% think it's nailing it as well. It's in Canada, it's $12.99 outright,
Oof.
which is kind of expensive. But if you compare it to like a flagship Samsung phone, which you're almost reaching $1,500 for their Ultra, it's fine. And it seemed like a great phone. Of course, I haven't gotten the chance to review it yet, but
Right.
that edge screen looked so nice. I'm someone who is a fan of the edge screen. I think that it helps the viewing experience when you're watching stuff. I like the idea of I don't know, I think it just makes it look nicer when you're watching YouTube and stuff on your phones.
I personally love it for the industrial design side. Like it makes a phone look so much slicker. Like I 100% agree with that. But I find in usability, like I still would rather have a flat screen, but it's like it's not going to be a deal breaker for me. Like I will still
Totally.
buy a phone if it has, like I have a Pixel 7 Pro. Come on, like that's the phone
Yeah.
that I drive every day, and it has a curved screen, and I'm totally okay with it.
I love how it felt in my hand, though. If the
Oh my
curvedness,
God.
it just felt like I didn't want to take it out. It felt like it belonged there. I've reviewed the S23 Ultra. That kind of feels a little too big, and the Pixel 7 Pro, which feels good.
It's
Don't
so
get me wrong,
big.
but the Edge Plus, it felt so perfect in my hand. I loved it.
You know, I can only agree with you because that's the first thing. Like that's probably the biggest takeaway for me was like, forget the specs, the pricing for a second. The in-hand feel of that phone has got to be one of the best in-hand feels
Totally.
of any flagship in the last maybe 9 months. Like I was blown away with that. I was like, holy crap. I mean, the frosted glass, the build quality, the fit and finish, the metal construction.
Yeah,
They didn't
all of
skimp
it.
around,
No, and that back is never going to get a fingerprints or smudges or anything like that because that back, it's just like that. They had like special wording for what they called it, but it's like mattish, right? I don't know what the word is for that.
Yeah, I call it frosted, but it's more like,
Frosted, yeah.
OnePlus did it, right? Like OnePlus has done it on a few phones over the
In the
years
past,
now.
yep.
And we kind of love that finish. So I'm super happy with the way it feels. The specs, I think, are on point. I think it competes more with the S23 Plus. How much does that cost in Canada now?
I think it's around the same price, or I can't think of it. I don't know the exact cost, but I think it's around the same price. It's like hovering around 1,300. I'm pretty sure. I can look it up.
Because you
though.
see here in the US, I think the S23 Plus is like $999 or something like that. And this thing is $799. Okay, so the $799.
Oh, that's a great steal there.
Yeah, so the $799 is only like 256 gigs of storage. You can get a 512 version. But the reality is, and you do lose millimeter wave, which only really matters if you're in Verizon in a stadium or something and it's really busy. Like the bottom line is, I honestly think, knowing how much better I prefer Moto's software experience versus One UI, and this is my personal preference, I think I'd go for the Moto, honestly, at
Totally,
that price difference.
And like in the 165 hertz screen and a bigger battery. And like I know this is
Faster
a little
charging.
small, but there's
68 watt.
a charger in a box, which doesn't happen anymore. People take that for granted, but I love that the charger is still in the box. It's fast charging. It's great.
I know.
I just looked it up that in Canada the S23 is $13.99. 256 storage and 8 gigabytes of RAM. So I mean, it's the same thing for an extra $100, and you're not getting as good specs. So
yeah, wow. And for us, it's $200 difference for the S23 Plus. So
which is like crazy.
I know. And so the reality, 68 watt charging, which is faster than 45 for the Samsung. Mm-hmm. You're getting a charger in the box, as you mentioned, etc. There's so many things here that are, I'm hoping you get the charger in the box because I think some of the Edge phones last year did not have a charger in the box, but I think they're the Verizon models. So this is also really interesting that this phone is only coming to some kind of second tier mobile virtual operators, not coming to the big three, at least in the US. And that it's going to be it's going to be sold unlocked by Moto and Best Buy, but it's only coming to like, I want to say US cellular, like some virtual operators, some secondary players. So I think what's going to happen, this is my theory as somebody who covers the US market, is Verizon's going to make not a version of this phone, but just rewinding it a little bit. This phone we got, the Edge Plus 2023, is essentially the Moto Edge 40 Pro in the rest of the world. We get a bigger battery. We get slightly slower charging. They get 120 watt and a smaller battery. And I think that's about the only major difference between them. So there's also an Edge 40 out there, right? And that Edge 40 is kind of a lesser version in the same way as we used to get an Edge Plus and an Edge. Yeah, exactly. I think the Moto Edge 2023 is still coming, and it's going to be a Verizon exclusive in the US. And that's going to be the phone that Verizon totally messes up for us. You know what I'm saying? And so I don't care. I don't care what they do to it, honestly, at this point.
Totally.
Because I would never buy that. I would go for the unlocked Edge Plus every day, all the time.
Yeah, and $799 is a great price. I mean, in
I
the US,
can't believe it.
That's so good. That's really
I know.
surprising to hear. That's a huge price difference for us in Canada.
So I don't know if you know this, Dean, but those of us here in the US media, we've been talking to Moto for years now, both on and off the record, about their strategy on the way they're selling their phones in the US and the way we're getting the short end of the stick. Because when you see what they were coming out with, all the Edge 30, Edge 20 before that in Europe, right? The Pros and the Ultras and the Fusions and all the other models that were metal and glass had super high-end specs that we never got because Moto just like went into bed with Verizon and just kind of gave in on giving us the good stuff. We called them on that so hard, so many times, that it seems like they finally listened, which is amazing to me. And not just listen, making a better phone, bringing the global model to the US, but they listen on the pricing, which I really didn't think they would. Because the G series, in my opinion, is overpriced for what you get, even though it's a perfectly fine phone and it was well supported and supports all the bands and, you know, but this phone for $799 is just like a winner all around. Like I cannot believe it. I'm still stunned by last week.
Is a steal. And the cameras, I mean, I didn't get to really play with the cameras, but 250 megapixel ones are just great. And you were talking very like happy about the 12 telephoto with the 2x zoom, the portrait photography.
Ideally, I would want a proper telephoto with OIS, like what the S23 has. Let's not go ultra, because the ultra is a whole different ballgame, right?
Totally.
But that being said, if you're going to give me a 2x telephoto and you then call it a portrait lens, and if you look at the specs on it, it doesn't have OIS, which is a bit of a bummer, but it does have a pretty decent sensor overall, and I think a very good f-stop. And so to me, that screams portrait lens, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I'll argue against myself that 2x zoom on a 50 megapixel sensor is probably going to be just fine, right? Like absolutely is going to make gorgeous photos.
It's 12, the telephoto.
I know, but I'm talking about if you didn't have this and you were to use a 2x zoom on the main sensor at 50 megapixel, you would probably still get a better picture technically. But the big difference here is the optics. This is optimized for portrait. So you're going to get that natural kind of portrait angle, less ultra wide face, like the face is going to look more pleasant, because that's the problem. Like a lot of people are going to say, well, the depth of field is really shallow on the 50 megapixel. So you're going to get that nice background blur if you take a portrait at 2x. First of all, on this phone, you can't, if you set it to 2x, it's going to switch to that portrait lens, so you can't test that theory. For sure. But in addition, based on all the other phones that don't have a dedicated 2x portrait lens, it's because they're wide angle camera, not ultra wide, but they're wide angle, those main sensors, you're getting a bit of a distorted face when you get close up. So you're punching in, you're getting less pixels, you're still getting a nice depth of field, but you're still getting that distorted lens. So to me, that's why I'm calling this a portrait, because if you look at the specs on the lens, this is pretty much a portrait lens, which is okay.
Yeah. You seemed excited about that last week.
I like taking portraits,
Yeah, no, the portraits are great. So, I mean, I'm excited to try it out. I'm so used to, like, using, like, the 5X on the S. Like, I usually just review the top of the line. So, I'm at Pixel 7 Pro or S23 Ultra, and I'm used to what they have. So, I'll be excited to try out a portrait lens.
And, I mean, here's the thing, right? Let's come back down from Cloud 9 for a second. The reality is that one of Moto's weaknesses is the cameras in general, the imaging stuff, not the hardware. Like I look at the Think phone that I'm using right now, and the camera hardware hits all the spots. Like you look on paper and you're like, yeah, OIS is there, fast lens, everything's right. But then you take photos with it and it's kind of like, ooh. And it's because their imaging pipeline kind of sucks. Now, I saw a few photo samples that I didn't spend too much time with the camera in Chicago, but some of our colleagues did. And I don't know if we can talk about this stuff, but the reality is there's hope, is what I'm going to just say. That, that Moto has improved things there. But that's the only weakness I can think of with this phone that might come and bite us in the future when you finally get to review this, is that we're going to be disappointed with the camera, even though it's better than anything Moto's ever done before. You know what I'm saying?
So as a black person, I find that a lot of, especially selfie cameras, are kind of off when it comes to color. Like my color is usually like not correct. Especially if it's like Google and Apple are pretty good at it. Especially if the company's from outside of North America. I took a selfie there and it didn't look bad though. It has a 60 megapixel on the front, and I the colors were right. Surprisingly, I was like, oh, this is. So I've reviewed Motorola phones in the past, like a few years ago, and I remember being like, oh, I'm not very happy with the camera. This time the selfies was okay.
Yeah. You probably really love the pixel tuning, right?
Yeah, real
It's
tone,
really good.
but real tone overtones it sometimes. So
Does it?
yeah,
Okay.
it's not always perfect.
So look, folks, the reality is we're getting a proper flagship, metal and
Yeah.
glass, wireless charging, OIS, all the trimmings, fast charging, Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, UFS 4.0, DDR5X RAM, like the whole 9 yards. Nothing on the thing alarms me, except, as I said, maybe that portrait, because it doesn't have OIS and it's only 12 megapixels.
Yeah,
But that doesn't mean anything, because I've seen cameras perform really fine doing that. I mean, look at the Pixel 6a, 12 megapixel sensor, just fine, right? So I'm excited because of that, and the pricing, and the fact that it's Moto software. I love it. It's so lightweight. I kind of think I love it better than Pixels, honestly.
really. Oh,
Well, okay, a few caveats. The caveats is I'm not talking about things like all the calling features. Like that is,
okay.
that is amazing. I would never give that up. That's kind of the reason I can't leave the Pixel. You know how iPhone users can't leave the iPhone because of iMessage? I can't
Yeah.
leave the Pixel because of all the calling features. I'm talking about the fact that I feel that Pixel is held back by Tensor, right? Not just in
Yes,
terms
okay.
of like battery life and overall performance, but the fluidity of the user experience in Pixel leaves a lot to be desired when you jump to, say, an S23 Ultra, or like even the Red Magic 8 Pro, which is a gaming phone. That thing is so fluid on the UI, even though the software is terrible. Like, you don't have that fluidity. And I think that Moto's software is, even on a crappy mid-range phone, is still really fluid. Number one. And OnePlus is a poster child for that. Like,
Yeah,
Oxygen
100%.
OS is so fluid on their phones. So that's the thing that I'm talking about. But I'm also talking about the bloat and feature bloat. There's so much now in the Pixel main user experience. And I feel that, I'm more of an EOS, like kind of plain Android person. That's kind of why I like Moto. It's just the pure thing. You're not getting, you're getting the chop for the flashlight. You're getting the like
the little fun things.
You can turn those off if you don't like them. But the bottom line is they're adding a few things, but it's not. And there used to be a time when Pixel and Nexus before that was also very lightweight. And I feel like, as much as I love my Pixel, it's a little sluggish in experience, and I feel sometimes a little bloated. There's so much stuff there that I don't really need. Like, I want and that's kind of my take. But I'm being nitpicky as F here, okay? Like,
no, but I agree. Like, I feel like Pixel and One UI, like I'm there is obviously a difference, and I can see the difference, but the user experience kind of does feel more bloated. And I'm someone who used to have a Nexus phone as well back in the day, and the Pixel 2. So you're right. It is starting to become more and more of like Pixel UI versus stock Android.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I feel like I'm just being super picky here. Just trust me. Like, I mean, like, anyway, all I'm saying is that I'm happy because it's Moto software, and because they're finally delivering all the specs, and the price is right. And then the camera is still a big question mark, because I'm a huge camera person. And of course, the Pixel delivers, right? Like, you can't go wrong.
Yep,
I mean, that's
for sure.
another reason why I'm not switching from Pixel. It's like, it's the camera experience and the call features and all the AI features.
Do you think that the fact that it has 8 gigabytes of RAM and also a QHD display matters to people? Like, do you think that people will even notice the comparison to like a Pixel 7 Pro that has I think it's WQHD and then also has 12 gigabytes of RAM?
I don't really think so. I mean, 8 gigs is the minimum, I think, for a flagship,
Totally.
so I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I never, even on my phones that support Quad HD, I set them to Full HD. My eyes are not super
Really?
great.
Okay.
Like, some people can see it and I believe them, and I don't, like, this is I would think, a personal thing. I would rather save a bit of battery power. I would rather have a high refresh rate And I think, honestly, to be between us, I think 165 is overkill. Like, I think anything over 120 is just fine. This is
I
just
felt like I
mostly.
noticed the difference, though. I
Do
felt like I
you?
noticed,
Okay.
which
think
is super
what you
weird.
notice is the fluidity of the experience. I think
And that could be
it would
very
be
true
just
as well.
as quick on 120, I think is what it is. But I
Okay.
could be wrong. And admittedly, my eyes are not that great. So maybe the fluidity is also a thing I don't notice. But look, I mean, that's bonus points to 165. It doesn't really have to have it,
it's
right?
totally 120 would have been good enough.
So yeah, overall, this Moto Edge thing, Edge Plus, sorry, 2023, super dope. Finally, and I feel like between that and all the Razer leaks, I feel Moto's kind of gotten their mojo back. Speaking of Razer
Yeah,
leaks, there is a Razer leak. So let's just dive into that. I mean, I don't think it's anything new here. Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, supposedly. Okay.
which
That's
is kind of
perfectly
strange.
fine.
Like, why would you
Ah,
go a step back? I mean, it's the same as the Z Flip 4, and
So-
I like the Z
so
Flip 4, but
Have you noticed that there's a lot of phones, especially in China, coming out with 8 Plus Gen 1, including like the Thing phone, for example, from Moto.
Mhm.
And I think it's a cost saving thing. It's like, it's probably
Yeah, okay.
so they're trying to hit a spot to be competitive with Samsung here. And honestly, 99% of the world is not going to notice the difference between an 8 Gen 2 and an 8 Plus Gen 1 right now.
I may not even notice, to be fair. Yeah.
Because unless you're playing some super hardcore games, which we're not going to do on a Razer, okay? Let's be real. The thermal throttling on that thing is probably going to be terrible. It's really bad on the Flip, so I assume that nobody's cracked that. I've tried it on the Oppo as well. It throttles like a lot after about
Totally.
5 minutes even. So I think in that sense it doesn't matter, and
Okay.
also it costs less money. It's also a super efficient chip. It actually might be more efficient than the 8 Gen 2 because 8 Gen 2 has more power, right?
Yeah.
Like more power overall. But in this, you're really limited on battery size. You're limited on thickness. You're limited on price. It totally makes sense to me that they would go with
That's
that.
fair. That's fair. But when I think about it, so this in August, probably going to see a Z Flip 5, and
Yes.
it might run 8. I am making up a chip right now. I don't think this exists yet, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it might run 8 Plus Gen 2, right?
Yeah.
People might want to go with the Z Flip 5. If I mean, these are all based on leaks. I mean, who knows what Motorola really has for the Razer? But going off these leaks, people might want to go to the Flip 5 if they see like a higher processor or higher chip.
But here's the reality: we don't know what the Razer's bringing to the table, other than that
Totally we don't.
full-on front display that looks incredibly cool in those Ren leaks here. So maybe that will be the reason for people to switch. That, and maybe the price will be more aggressive, and maybe they don't want to wait till August. I
That's
think
fair.
there's an entire category of people who want a folding flip-like phone who've been observing, but they don't want a Samsung. And maybe that's who they're going to target with this. Because, look, you and I are going to compare the specs, but the average person's not going to care
That's
what
very true.
Snapdragon's
Yeah.
in there, right?
Yeah.
And you saw how popular the Z Flip has been with the average person. Overall, most of the people who are blown away by it are people that are like just not tech people. Like, I know so many people who bought a Flip just because it's cool.
Yeah, I've been flipping through, I guess Tinder lately, and you see people with those selfies with their flip, and you're like, man, you got a flip as well. Hey, it's becoming popular. It's like a few years ago, people wouldn't buy like a Pixel phone, and now they're becoming more and more popular. And now people are really getting into average consumers are really getting into these flip ones. At least people are not geared towards the Fold 4 yet because it's crazy expensive, but at least the flip ones like the Z Flip 4 are really getting there. So I do have hope for a Razer one, and also it will probably be cheaper.
Well, remember, like, there's leaks of 2 different versions, right? So I'm wondering, like, if they can hit $799 US on one of them,
Totally.
like,
Yeah, I think
I mean,
that
there you go. There's your answer versus the Z Flip 5.
yeah, that's totally fair. I think that especially seeing that Motorola pushed out such a good Edge Plus 2023 with that $799 price, I think that is very possible we'll see a foldable in that price range as well, and that's crazy. It will be
Wouldn't it
really
be
good.
crazy if Moto like totally pulls the rug from under Samsung's feet and makes the first flip folding phone that's affordable.
I think that's what people want, though. People like really want like people just want foldables to be like their normal phone cost. No one wants to spend all this money on these phones, and especially when they know that it might break because it has mechanical moving parts, and people are always very skeptical of that. But if you see a Motorola Razr foldable that is the same cost as just an any old, or even more affordable than like an S23, even not even like another Motorola phone, but just an S23 plus, you're gonna get the foldable. I think, especially like people who are like in their high school kids. I can totally see a high school kid being like rocking this.
So, my spouse is an iPhone user, and when we moved to Canada recently, well, almost a year ago now, we're still going back and forth between the two countries. So we have two SIMs, two phones each. It's just easier than dual simming a phone,
Yeah.
And
totally.
Theo said, "I want a Z Flip for my second phone," and they're kind of hating Android, but they're loving the Flip experience, having a bigger
Yeah.
screen to play their games.
Totally.
But it's really interesting. Like they're basically saying, like, I will not give up my Flip, but I will give up Android in a heartbeat. I want an iPhone like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think Apple will ever do it though.
I think Apple will have to do it. They will have to do it. Like I don't think
maybe
the
not till
Fold.
2025 or 6.
I don't think the Fold is a viable form factor for most people. Like, look,
Yes.
for us, absolutely. It's a niche that's going to continue being a niche that's going to continue growing, going down in price and increasing in choices for those of us who are power users. In the same way as there's always been people buying the Note. But
Yeah,
those
100%.
Note users, I don't think most of those Note users have been average Joe users. Like
No.
they're being heavy users, but not tech savvinessly, but heavy users.
Yeah, my mom is a Note person, but
So
yeah,
I think it's still a niche product in that sense, right? It's
Yeah.
a successful niche, but it's a niche. And as such, I think the Folds are going to be like that. I think the Flips in the next 5 years are going to become totally common.
like take over, eh?
I don't know
Okay.
about take over, but I think that I'm going to make a bold prediction by 2026, half the flagships will be flip phones sold.
Really? Okay. I personally, I think if a phone doesn't fold, it doesn't matter. Of course, I think that's not completely true. The Moto Edge Plus is cool, and all these other premium phones are very cool. But I'm someone who loves folding phones. I think they are the way of the future. Even like the Razr was cool, but specifically folding phones.
Yeah, so let's talk about that actually, because I played with it at MWC. So that's why I didn't bother playing with it again at the Moto event this last week, because I was like, I want to others like you have the opportunity. Because,
Thank you.
well, come on, it's the least like, that's the thing about being a journalist. It's like, first of all, I can spend more time on the Edge Plus, as I still haven't covered that, but I already covered the Riser quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That thing blows my mind. I want it so bad.
It's like, at first, when I got into that room and I was like, man, I don't know about this phone. And I asked whether or not like this is more for specific like feminine users, just because of like those past phones where you remember those square shaped phones a billion years ago that were always like, oh, this is the perfect phone for women, whatever, right? So I'm like, okay, like I asked that question, but the more and more I was playing with it, the more I'm like, no, I want this. Like, I think anyone would want it. It fits perfect in your hand, and when you want to watch something bigger, it slides out, which is such a cool idea. I was actually I went home, like I went back to the hotel room afterwards, and I was just thinking, and I was like, no, I like that phone. That's a great phone. Yeah.
I was very impressed. Like, I love the idea of a phone that's a little like, see, this is what I like. Like, having played with some of the old Razrs, not the old, but the Flip, like the last year's, the 2022, which is a little bit big. Like, you can run full screen apps on the front cover display. And it's a little cramped. So I'm really excited to see what Moto's going to do with the new Razr, because there's more real estate. Because I was using it closed a lot. And so then if I need more real estate, I flip it open, right? Kind of like
100%.
what people do with their folds, right?
Yeah,
but scaled down. And I think that's where the Riser kind of comes into play. You can have a more compact phone you can still use, and then you want a little more real estate, you push the button, it expands. It's the same kind of concept, right? Ultimately, phones have become really big. Like if you look at like even that Edge Plus
Oh my
2023 that we
gosh.
both love, you put that next to like an original iPhone or even
Yeah.
an iPhone 5S or something,
They're
and
rocking
it's
like
just like a
4-inch, 5-inch
giant.
screens. Yeah.
And I
Totally.
think a lot of people don't like that. They like the real estate, they like the battery life, which is why they're not complaining. A lot of them are not
Yeah.
complaining. There's a vocal minority that is complaining, and that's fair. But the reality is, this is kind of the best of both worlds. You're getting a bigger screen. Yeah, you're compromising on battery a little bit. But I think that technology is going to improve to the point where, I mean, look at it this way. Today, most flagships have 2-day battery life, no problem. Like
Mhm.
1 day is if you're pushing it and you're at CS all day, right?
I mean,
Like I
not
think
a Pixel.
Oh no, Pixel. You're picking the worst example.
Okay,
Again,
okay, that's fair.
the
That's fair.
tensor
You're
is
right.
the like. But if you look at an iPhone 14 Pro or you
Oh,
look
it
at like a
runs 2 days
Galaxy
easily.
or
Yeah.
you're getting like any Chinese phone today is 2 days, no problem with a 5,000 milliamp hour battery and a Snapdragon 8 something, right? My point is that didn't used to be the case. You rewind like pre-COVID, you were lucky to get a day and a half out of your flagship. It was
Totally.
much more of a struggle. So I think the same is going to happen with flip phones and folding phones. We're going to get battery life on par with the bigger normal bar phones. And then at that point, you get the benefit of something that's compact in your pocket and you can make bigger when you need the real estate, whether it's book fold or
Yeah.
flip
Flip
or
phone
or riser,
roll.
right?
Yeah.
Or roll, yeah. And I think that's why I'm so excited about this riser because I feel like,
Yeah.
and it's not just Moto, right? LG made one and like just didn't ship it, which is crazy
Nope.
to me. They should have totally done that.
Apparently, they had a lot of units too, and people just had to buy them off, which is insane.
They
Like
should have done that
staff.
as their swan song,
Yeah, I would have
would've
loved
been
that. I mean, the
perfect.
wing was kind of a cool idea.
I
We
love
didn't
the
get
wing. I
that.
kept my wing. I kept it.
You kept it?
Oh,
I
yeah.
I wanted to play with that so much.
Well, next time you're going to be at I/O, you want me to bring it?
Please, oh my gosh, please do.
All right, just
I would love
remind
that.
me, okay? It's
Okay,
in
I
the
will send
drawer.
you a
I can get
message.
it out for you. It's so
Okay.
good. I'll run the software update on it. Apparently, Verizon
Yeah.
sent a software update.
Oh, cool. Like a last one?
Yeah. Maybe the last one. LG promised us they would software update these phones for a few years. Like
Did they? Okay.
The LG Velvet and the LG Wing. And
Yes,
so
yes.
apparently last fall there was an update for the Wing. I never installed it because I haven't pulled it out of a drawer in years.
Totally.
Hopefully the battery is still good, but I'll bring it.
Thank you. I would love that. But yeah, I love these cool phone ideas. I think that a few years ago we were getting these cool gimmicks, and of course they weren't for everyone, and they didn't work. Like LG, for instance, they had the Air, whatever you call it. I don't remember what they call it.
Oh, the gestures.
Yeah, the gesture.
Oh
Pixel
my
even
God.
had gestures too, or Pixel the 2 had the squeeze to do an app or whatever. And I love these
The
cool
3
features.
had the squeeze. The 4 had the radar, whatever
Yeah, the
it's
4
called.
had the radar
Soli.
yeah. And I love these cool features. And I wish that more and HTC did so many of these features. And I wish that more companies did them, because right now what we're getting is the kind of the same phone over and over again from different companies. Like I feel like for my S22 Ultra review, or S23 Ultra review, I could have just copied and pasted my S22 Ultra review and just changed a bit of the camera section for the 200 megapixel. But to see like these flip-in phones, fold-in phone, Razor, like the Razor, I love that. I love that there's new innovations, and of course they're not for everyone. And I mean, people might just call them gimmicks, but it's something new, and it's something that can potentially change the way how we use phones in the future.
You realize that the people who call the riser a gimmick are also the same people who are complaining that phones are boring these days.
Totally. Yeah, totally. 100% they are.
It's like, come on, let's
Yeah,
get real. It's just so funny.
Yeah, I just loved it. I think it was, again, I don't think I would personally buy one, just because I like bigger phones. But the fact that it is there, and maybe I would buy one. I don't know. Maybe I would get one for the weekend.
I would look. Okay, so I don't buy phones anymore. Everybody knows
Yeah,
this on
no
the
one does.
podcast
Yeah,
because
I
we
don't
get the
either.
phones for free. So I'm very privileged, right? But at the same
Yes.
time, if I had to buy phones, like I'd always tell you when I review a phone, I would buy this. I think I would probably not buy the riser simply because it's a first gen product.
Yeah, that's fair.
And, I would recommend you don't buy a first gen product that's this radical. Like, but if you have money to blow, like, do it, because somebody needs to buy
Totally.
this phone so they can make a second version, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. But I'm very excited about that form factor. I don't know about specifically that phone, but I like the idea of a phone that rolls into a bigger shape. Whether it's like this, a book
Yeah, like a
size, or if
tablet
it's
or
like
totally.
the riser is. Yeah, I think it's super cool. So speaking of folding phones, Google just this morning dropped a video on the Made by Google Twitter showing the Pixel Fold in all its glory. So it's now real, and it's the first time they've been official about it in any way, shape, or form. What's your take?
Google just loves doing that to everyone. Google just every year
Troublemakers.
They are troublemakers. Like last year when they showed off the Pixel 7 Pro at Google I/O. And they're probably going to do that again this year. We should get ready for a Google 8 Pro announcement next week.
Yep.
And they are troublemakers. But away from that, it looks so sexy. And I hope I can say that. But it looks so nice.
Yeah, I agree. So my positives is, my God, Google's making a folding phone. Yes, 100%.
Totally.
I also love the form factor because I have the Oppo Find N, so I like a slightly smaller.
Please bring that next week as well.
I can show you last year's.
Yeah, I love that. I think they're cool.
They didn't want that back. But basically, I like that slightly smaller than the Samsung Fold form factor, so that's another thing. The negatives immediately are, and one is very obvious, and the other one is I'll have to determine after using it, is the very obvious one is Tensor G2. Sorry, I'm not a big fan of the Tensor chip. I've said it many times before. I think that I'm going to repeat this because I think it's really important, and I really hope somebody at Google can listen. We need Google to make a NPU processor that's a separate thing from the main processor, kind of like Oppo does with the Mary Silicon X. We need them to make an optimized Tensor chip that's for AI and for image processing that is working together with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Okay. That's what we need them to do.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't think they'll do it, but I can see it.
They won't do it because they're in bed with Samsung, and Samsung's trying to get rid of the last few Exynos they have floating around, I guess, and repackage them. But look, that's the other thing is those bezels, top and bottom, left and right, are a little big on the insides, big screen. Let's see how that pans out in use. It might actually be beneficial to hold it to be with less fingerprints and stuff. So I don't know. In practice, I might like it. But that's the only reservations I have so far.
Yeah, I thought it looked really nice. I like that the bigger aspect ratio at the front as well compared to the flip that's too. It's like not the flip, sorry, the fold that's too thin. It looked nice. I don't know. I'm excited to play with it next week.
How can you not be excited? Let's be real here.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm such a fold guy. As I just said 2 minutes ago, I love when phones fold and do cool stuff and have. I know Pixel UI isn't perfect, but it is, I think, better than One UI, for instance. I'm excited to see a Pixel on a Google on a foldable finally. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so on board with you because personally, I'm not a big fan of, the One UI, as you know. So having an actual phone that's folding that doesn't have One UI and might have some optimization for the screen size because it was made by Google.
By Google, yeah.
That's super exciting. Also worth mentioning, but not really worth diving into because there's nothing new here, but there's more Pixel 7a leaks. Surprise.
Are there?
But but whatever. At this point, we all know what that's going to be like. There's no surprises anymore.
Yeah.
What I'm more excited about, though, is that the Nothing Phone 2 is launching this summer. So I love that they tweeted about this.
So August late, probably.
Well, yeah, it could be anywhere between June 21st and September 21st, I guess.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of like that announcement at MWC. I was there when Carl Pei went on stage at the Qualcomm booth and said, hey, we're making a phone with an flagship 8 series, and it's like, come on, this summer, this is so Nothing teasing us in the traditional
totally.
Nothing way.
But they love that. I mean, that's what OnePlus was. I don't know,
Yeah.
several years ago, and of course, Carl took it to his new company, and it's. I mean, it's still fun though. It's fun. I mean, it's fun to see that, and the little tease gave you that white and that blinking red light. And I don't know. I didn't touch the Nothing Phone. Brad from Mobile
Oh,
CRP
it's
reviewed it.
so nice.
So
Oh my
I
God.
played with it a little bit. I didn't get to do the full review, but it's gonna have it's supposed to have HN1. It's supposed to be better and premium and all this stuff. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the first one didn't come to the US.
Yes, correct. It wasn't officially available in the US. You could gray market it.
So I mean, this one is supposed to come to the U.S., and that means it might also come to Canada, which is also it's also really exciting. So I love I love phone leaks that are like not like the conventional or like phone teasers. Like if I didn't work in this business, I probably would have loved the Google Fold tease with the Google did today. But now I'm like, oh, just another article I have to go write. But I like little phone teases like that. So and I'm looking forward to it. Nothing there. These guys are like they're just trying to do something fun and new and not like everyone else. And it's this summer. That's not a long way. There's only a few. I mean, we're not in the summer yet, but there's only like I don't know, like within 5. It has to be within 5 months of today. So that's pretty exciting. So
yeah. And I having used the original, I don't have it anymore, sadly. But I really like that phone. I mean, gimmicks aside, taking away even the glyph stuff, like it was really a good, solid mid-ranger. It does everything right. Wireless charging, good cameras, everything was really good. So I'm very excited to see what they do when they go higher up in price and in features on this. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see what they put in. They're probably going to just put everything in. You're going to probably see like 240 hertz refresh rate and all this random stuff.
That's overkill.
Yeah, totally.
But just reminding me, you're talking about the Pixel Fold again, that it is the 4th of May, which means it is...
May the Fold be with you.
There you go. I didn't want to steal it from you because you said it.
Yeah, but it's funny. That's what they tweeted. They were like, "May the Fold be with you," and we're like, "That's just cute," but okay.
I have to say that was, as a big fan of dad jokes.
Yeah, it was very much a dad joke.
Very good. Very good.
And I love Star Wars too. So I mean, like, it was a good mix.
Of course. Me too. Yeah. There's a couple of more things before we wrap up. The first one, I know this is going to be, why did I have this in there? Let me explain. Apple, suppose there's a rumor that shows that Apple is going to be coming out with USB Type-C earpods. Now, the earpods, as you know, are the wired earbuds that Apple's been making since the original iPod. And they've only gotten renamed EarPod after they came out with the wireless AirPods. And they was originally 3.5 millimeter 4-prong at the end, right? And then they went to a lightning one. And now, obviously, with an upcoming iPhone with USB Type-C and an existing iPads with USB Type-C that doesn't have a headphone jack, it makes sense that they would make a USB-C version of the EarPods. So that's the rumor. No big deal. The reason I'm excited about it, believe it or not, as I mentioned in my little email I sent you about preparing for the show. If you are stuck ever need to make a really good voice audio recording on a device, any device, and you don't have a microphone or something, Apple's EarPods are incredibly good. The microphone on them is leaps better than the AirPods. Leaps better than any other wired. So not only do you have zero latency, but the quality of the audio coming out of that microphone is unbelievable, which is why I recommend you find one of those, even if it's a 3.5 millimeter one, plug them into your laptop because it can support the microphone and boom. And the trick is, like if you use the cord, like I don't know if you can see it with the blurring here, guys, the people watching, but here's the cord of you just kind of like do this, have the microphone part on there, put some like gaff tape under your shirt, and that way it doesn't rub against anything, and it's to the side so it doesn't get you air. And you'll see the recordings. It's like having a lav mic. It's that good. It's so
Interesting. I actually didn't know
clear.
that.
So that's why I got excited about this piece of rumor. I know I'm such a nerd.
I have a quick question about that, though. I didn't think that was coming to Canada. I thought that the USB-C thing was going to be like a European version. Or,
they're not
like
going
North
to make
America.
two versions of the iPhone. That's ridiculous.
No. Okay. All right. I'm such a doubter of Apple. I mean, I use mostly Apple products, to be fair. I don't want to lie about that, but I don't know. I can still see them doing like Lightning in North America and USB-C in Europe.
No, it's not happening.
Okay.
It's over. It's done.
Because that would be great for Android users, right? AirPods don't really work well on your on Android devices, so having an earpod headphones that work great with USB-C, I mean, I think that would be great.
For me, it's really just about, recording voice.
that's fair.
Like, I wouldn't use these to listen to music. They're not as good as the AirPods.
That's fair.
The AirPods sound much better for music listening and have noise canceling and all that. I'm talking about the AirPods Pro, of course, but these just for recording voice. Mwah. So I'm excited. I know I get excited with the weirdest rumors. Last little bit of news I have is MediaTek is making a new chip that's an old chip. They announced
very strange.
They announced the Dimensity 7050, and it's like it's a Dimensity 1080 rebadged. I have no idea what's going on here.
Very
I almost
strange.
want to email them and ask.
Yeah, what's going on? What are you doing? Yeah, I saw that leak and I was like, what?
As you know, MediaTek has been the sponsor of this podcast on and off for years.
Okay.
And so I owe them to at least mention that they have a quote unquote new chip out. Not really new, but whatever. It's okay. And that's basically the news for this week. I mean, that's really
a lot of news there.
Mostly Moto. It's been a Moto week, which is I don't think
great.
I've had a Moto week in forever.
I haven't written a Moto hands-on in a very long time, just because they'll tell us stuff, and they'll be like, "Oh, but it's not coming to Canada, or it's not going to be North America, or like all these exciting phones, and just not coming here, right?" So it's exciting that I've finally done that. They're finally bringing us an exciting phone.
Exactly. Well, listen, since we have to wrap up, do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, your social media handles, and of course, tell them all about your writings over at Mobile Syrup?
Totally. So you can find me at My Daily Dose on Instagram. I'm The Daily Dean on Twitter, and Daily spelled D-A-L-E-Y. It's just my last name. It's just a little cute, fun thing. And on Mobile Syrup, you can find me there. I'm all over the site. Just type Dean Daily in the search bar as well, and you'll just get all my content as well. But there's also some good stuff.
Yeah, so folks, you should check out Dean's hard work everywhere. And if you want to speak with me and Dean about this podcast, Twitter is probably the best way to go, for better or worse. You know my handle on Twitter and Instagram. It is at Tankgrl. That's TNKGRL. Like the comic book character, just drop the vowels. So yeah, Twitter is a good place to chat with us. And Instagram is where you'll find pretty pictures of phones, pretty pictures of cars, pretty pictures of travel, food, all the things I do, all taken with phones. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, it's at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the big platforms: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, everywhere good podcasts can be found. So consider subscribing. And if your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that as well. There's a couple of YouTube channels that go alongside the podcast. If you want to see, for example, an unboxing of the OnePlus Pad from last week, I've got that up right now. And that's youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast and youtube.com/mobiletechmore. The first channel is more about the phones, the wearables, and personal audio. And the second one is more about like travel tech, car tech, home automation, all that stuff. So you know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the little notification bell, and remember to comment. You comment about the podcast as well if you like, no problem there at all. And for those of you who want something special and something extra and want to help me out financially, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/Tankgrl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. You can get a video version of this podcast, which comes out a couple of days ahead of time usually. So that means you can listen to the show and watch us interact a day before or 2 days before the public audio version. So that's a nice little bonus. That's one of the tiers. We have a Discord server you can join, and we also have other tiers. So go check it out, patreon.com/TNKGRL. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. You know I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And I want to thank you, Dean, for being my guest this week. Thank you so much for being on the show.
No, thank you. This was a pleasure, and I had a lot of fun. Invite me whenever you want. I'll always be available for you.
That's awesome. I'll totally do that. Thanks so much, Dean. We'll have you on at some point in the future. And folks, you know we'll have another podcast next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.